So with that, I'll stay here and let these guys sit there, and I'll be happy to open it up to questions if folks have.
Professor, how long can we wait for the Iranian people? They don't seem to, they have great bravery, and they come out and they fight against the Basti and all that, but there is a limited amount of time. We've waited since 1997.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I can, answer that question, but I would say that Iran has pretty much a bad taste in its mouth from intervention and outside involvement. So I think the Iranians, in general, as a population, think about our involvement in the region, our intervention in their democratic process in the 50s, our support for the Shah who killed his people and suppressed the left, the right, was very anti-clerical, anti-students. And so I think the question of how long we should wait, it's a good one. However, the Pandora's box that we would open if we go in with another CIA coup or an actual intervention can unleash forces or, make the situation much worse than we think. That generally the approach in social sciences, you wait for the indigenous forces at the risk of the reform movement dying.
But it may be sooner. I think that's a big question. And the second calculus is does the reform movement succeeding change the calculus on nuclear capability? And I think we risk putting too much faith in the reform movement. Mousavi was pretty clear in his election that should he have won that race, that he was not going to abandon the nuclear program. And so I think we have to separate at some level our support for the reform movement from our desire to remove Iranian nuclear capability.
Thank you. Sure. Just very quickly, I think it's very important to realize this is not just an issue for Israel. There was recently a meeting in Jordan, 4 months ago now, in which Jordanian, Saudi, Egyptian, Israeli security people met to discuss the rise of the Shiite crescent, as they put it, and the threat to Sunni states in the region, in the Gulf and beyond. This is not an issue for Israel. Old friends of the United States are in panic. Old friends of the United States are losing faith in the administration, and they're turning to France, of all people, for support. And actually, amazingly enough, the British and the French are much more ahead than the Obama administration on pushing for sanctions. And I find it deeply alarming that the United States is sort of falling behind and taking a moral stand on human rights and the threat, not just to Israel, but to the region and beyond the region. Ahmadinejad just less than 2 weeks ago, 11 days ago.
Attention please, about 5 minutes to 9 and the library will be closing in 5 minutes. If you have any materials to check out, please take them to the learning services desk in the lobby now. Thank you.
Okay. He basically said that if anybody intervenes against Iran in any way, that there'll be weapons going off in American cities. He threatened the United States, and there wasn't a word. I think that Obama's administration has done is that they've spoken about engagement, and I actually was in favor of engagement, but engagement was sitting down face to face, having negotiations and engaging and discussing and debating and arguing and trying to work out a solution. Yet there had to be, at the same time, a regime of sanctions with a deadline that was being held over the regime. We don't know what the sanctions will be. Now they're still talking. Deadlines have come and go. I think there's been about 4 or 5 deadlines that we know of. What the sanctions will be has never been articulated. And I find that's not engagement, number one. Number two, I remember when we were fighting apartheid, I was the chairperson of the African National Congress Solidarity Committee in Canada, and when people said that we were opposed to sanctions, that it will hurt the African people, the people who are fighting for democracy wanted people from outside to support them and to have sanctions. I think the same is true. Why are we so afraid of a regime that couldn't defeat its enemy in Iraq? They slaughtered each other for 8 years in a horrific war. They couldn't defeat Iraq. The United States marched in days and defeated them militarily before the occupation. And why are we afraid of the regime in terms of supporting the opposition? We're actually, the administration is taking away funding from human rights heroes that are fighting for democracy on the streets of Iran because we don't want to upset the regime and that there'll be a backlash against the West. Where is our leadership?
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to ask each and every one of you, the speakers, was there ever a country named Palestine?
Yes.
When?
Or there was a state
What,
called...
pardon?
Okay,
Please
go
speak
ahead.
up, I cannot hear you.
Go ahead. You'll ask the question.
I asked the question, each and every one of you, was there ever a country named Palestine?
Well, there was.
At every lecture on this particular issue of the Middle East, I asked this question. I had yet to get an answer except from a professor at New Britain. And I was escorted out because I asked a question that he couldn't answer and he lied to us. And there were teachers there who were going to teach students about the lies to listen to him. I still would like to know if there ever was a country named Palestine.
I'm not sure that it relates so much to our discussion about Iran. However, there's a modern term we call nation when the state is recognized by the United Nations and the international community. So in that modern sense, your answer is no, the state of Palestine. However, if you're talking about the nation being representative of people, indigenous people living on land, absolutely, there's a nation and a people
Oil is answering that question.
of Palestine. But I think we probably should have a more productive
You heard what I said. Oil answers this question. 57 Muslim countries.
I think your question was answered.
Pardon?
I think your question was answered.
I beg your pardon, both.
Okay, we literally have to be out of here in
I figured that's what it was.
So, okay.
We have a deadline. People want us out of here. And I still didn't get the answer.
President Ahmadinejad organized a conference after the non-proliferation conference that President Obama had coordinated. President Ahmadinejad organized a conference after the Obama non-proliferation conference, and he attracted 60 countries to that conference, pointing out that the United States is the threatening country. The United States used atomic bombs. United States is providing weapons of mass destruction. Basically, I don't see us isolating Iran. I think Iran is succeeding in isolating us. So I don't understand. So I don't understand like where the sanctions will come in to play when we're perceived, the United States, in the Muslim world with success as being the occupation force. That we're now the occupiers in Iraq. So sanctions to me aren't the way of engaging because they're winning the battle against the Western world.
Well, I mean,
It's a waste of time.
Professor Sayej can talk about this more articulately than I can, but I mean, I do get the sense that there is this, very real internal political debate happening there, and whether or not this settles the nuclear question, we are much better off with the reformers than we are with the current regime, and to the extent that there is a real level of discomfort with the sort of isolated position that this regime has put themselves in today, and if you can exacerbate that level of distaste with real and tough sanctions, then you do potentially have the ability to fundamentally change the dynamics on the ground in favor
Under this president.
in favor of the
Like Israel tried against Hamas, doesn't work.
Well, it's a different. I mean, I think you're sort of.
Well,
I think it's apples to oranges.
You become the.
May I have your attention, please? The library is now closed. Thank you very much.
We don't get up.
Are we allowed to stay about 10 minutes beyond?
We could go up there, right?
I can't.